to get rid of the neighbor's cats. Yes, I've just recently acquired a very lucky purchase. Long story in how I managed to get this, but it was a really good deal. And I've always wanted to try and learn how to play one of these. As you can tell, and by the way, that was literally the first time I've tried it today to make a noise out of it. As you can tell, I may have, a few lessons to go. Probably no more than 600 or 700, but let me just put this down. Right, and where was I? Oh yeah, a couple of things. Now, Bergoglio, there's some people that think that sedevacantists are like, just this tiny little group of people in the world. So Bergoglio commissioned this, which is, the Vatican's sort of, oh no, you shouldn't listen to these crazy guys. It's in Italian. So I'm gonna, the back of it is just, it's amazing. I'm gonna translate live. Now, I haven't read this before, so it's in Italian and I'm translating live in English, so it might take me a little second. But Francis was not elected legitimately. He's a heretic. He wants to canonize even Martin Luther. In 5 years of the papacy, the critics outside and especially inside the Catholic Church, so you'll notice that indeed most of the critics are inside the Catholic Church, have attacked Bergoglio, accusing him of heresy, just like the 4 cardinals which have expressed their doubts in to do with his openings for divorced people, or those who have realized 200 manifests all over the streets of Rome, which basically claimed there was no charity in the Latin American Pope towards his opponents. So throughout Rome, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there's posters all over the place saying this guy is not the Pope, Sedevacantisti, this book, written by Francesco Antonio Grana, Vaticanist of Il Fatto Quotidiano.it. So he is a journalist working for the Vatican, wants to reply point by point to the attacks, the unfounded attacks and unjustified and unfounded attacks against Bergoglio, going through his various successes in the ecclesiastical world and his geopolitical panorama, global geopolitical panorama. I am going to read through this just to tear it to little pieces, but since it's only in Italian, I'll probably just do a little bullet point as an appendix or something in the book I'm finishing off. So anyway, that's just 2 good bit of news. One, the neighbor's cat is going to stay away from me soon, and Bergoglio's obviously, when was this published? Bergoglio's obviously getting worried. 2017. So it's been out there a little while already. Yep. And people that saying, oh well, sedevacantists, it's just crazy. Another interesting thing was I was told by you know who you are, you pretty girl. One of the ladies that follows me sent a message saying, hey, this guy is going to be live online talking about Vigano's letter. And the guy's name is, I forget now, but he's some famous, supposedly Catholic guy who talks online. He's got 185,000 followers or whatever. I am going to try and find out his name as I speak with you, just because it's sort of relevant. He's got quite a big following. And I think, if I remember right, He might be the guy that sometimes does a podcast with Anne Barnhart, but I'm speaking under correction because I don't remember. Marshall, is it something like that? Something Marshall. Let me just quickly have a quick look. Dr. Taylor Marshall, could it be that? Dr. Taylor. Let's see if I'm horrible with names, so, but anyway. Hopefully this will load up sometime soon when my computer wakes up. The interesting thing is that this guy started out with a Pater Noster and an Ave Maria or whatever in Latin, and very well presented and all well dressed up and everything. And he read through the Vigano letter, and he made some comments about, like the hermeneutics of continuity. Yep. Dr. Taylor Marshall, there you go. And the particular YouTube one that he did was on Vigano, which was a few days ago. Now, the really interesting thing about this guy, and I don't know anything about him, all right? He's obviously some kind of presents as a Catholic. But the interesting thing is that I stayed there the whole time because I thought, no, I want to see if he's going to answer super chats. So I sent him a $10 super chat where I basically said, hey, let's see if I might have saved the super chat. Let me just see what I actually said to him. And this is why you've got to, it's really important that you keep these things in mind, because you sort of think, oh, well, Vigano's a good guy. He sounds like he's telling the truth. And you don't really realize that a lot of these imposters have got their own little agendas. And they're not there to shed light on anything. They're just trying to take over for their own reasons, for their own positions. Some people might be genuine or whatever, but the thing is, you've always got to look at what is the story. What are they actually saying? Are they telling the truth? Is there anything in what they're saying that I don't think I screen capped it, but anyway, it was something like, oh, maybe I have, but I can't remember. I took a picture somewhere. It was a question along the line of, do you agree that all the popes since 1958 were fake, or do you agree that Vatican II is filled with heresy, and those who promulgated and promoted become public heretics as per Canon 98 Part 4. Now the thing is, I believe I noticed when he saw that pop up on his screen, because I kind of, I could see he was scanning, talking. He's well practiced at what he's doing. He's pretty good at doing a decent sort of video podcast. But I could see that he was sort of scanning, reading some of the comments and so on. And I'm pretty sure that he read that one, and he had a little panic attack, and he just ignored it and just pretended like that never happened. That was the only super chat that had a question to it, wasn't addressed, which is unusual. I've been on several different podcasts of various people, and they tend to always genuinely answer questions. Even questions that are meant to be a gotcha sort of thing, and mine wasn't a gotcha. I genuinely didn't know anything about this guy, so I didn't know. I thought, oh, maybe he is a sedevacantist, maybe he's not, maybe he is a Catholic, maybe he's not, but clearly he won't accept the fact that Ratzinger and Wojtyla and all those guys were not popes. Now, it's a little known fact that both Ratzinger and Wojtyla basically blessed a Freemasonic church that was built, I can't remember now if in Assisi or something. I need to look it up because it would be quite an interesting little tidbit to add to the book as well. And I'm at the end stages where I'm just sort of editing and stuff now. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting how the facade is starting to collapse, and it's been collapsing pretty rapidly. So, these other imposters are probably realizing that Bergoglio is not going to be able to hold to it, and it's time for a change of guard, and Vigano is possibly positioning himself to become the next real pope, something like that. Now the thing is, Is it possible? Now, if I remember right, there's a couple of things about Vigano that are interesting. One is, I believe that he was ordained something like in 1968. Now, if that's the case, it is possible, it's certainly possible, that he was, still went through seminary and all that in what was mostly, for the most part, probably an actually Catholic education, because you have to keep in mind that it was 63, really December of 63, when really the first hints of the heresy were made public. Now, if you were in the whole Catholicism, becoming a priest and so on, you should probably have known about it. But let's be generous. We have to be prudent, and we also have to be charitable as Catholics. So it is absolutely possible that a seminarian studying in the 60s and getting ordained in 1968 was still possibly an actual Catholic. And if he was busy doing that stuff, between 63 68, he was going to seminary, and that whether Vatican II stuff was being thrown at him or not, who knows. But the point is that Vigano has a doctorate in canon law. Now, if he was ordained in 68, he can only have a doctorate in canon law of 1917, because there was no other canon law. That was it. That was literally the document. And unlike what the deceivers will try and tell you, there is no, there was one tiny little change made to Canon 1099, which was got to do with marriage and nothing to do, and it was a tiny little change. It essentially lasted until Roncalli came in, the first anti-pope, who immediately started to try and change it and disbanded the committee that had put in place by Pope Pius the 10th, I believe, or 9th, I can't remember. Pope Pius and had set up the whole canon law thing, and he put these 16 cardinals in charge of what, again, the deceivers will tell you, oh, well, there's these 16 cardinals they're the only ones who can interpret canon law. That's not true. It's what those people were there for was to ensure that there was no promulgation of anything that went against canon law, or if there was any doubt, or if anybody came up with, oh, but 500 years ago it said this in this particular document and the canon law is going against it. Those were the only guys that were there to verify which way it had to go compared to the old history, and making sure that none of the canons invalidated anything in the past beyond a certain point. And there was something else that was, if it's been in tradition for a long time, but less than 200 years, and it contradicts the canon, then it can be allowed as long as it's it's a traditional thing or whatever. It doesn't invalidate any of the divine things, which it wouldn't, because anything that's been in the church for 1,500 years or whatever isn't going to be invalidating Catholic dogma. If it's a tradition that is less than 100 years old, I think it said something like, then it's done away with and canon law takes precedence. Why would that be? Because canon law is based on all the canons of the Catholic Church over a period of 2,000 years. So the chance that something in it doesn't work properly or whatever would be closer within the last 100 years than when there was already some infiltration and so on. The stuff that's been there since the beginning isn't going to change. And that now, since that happened, since 1917 when it was first promulgated, until Roncalli came along, there was basically zero issues with canon law. It did not contravene anything. It was the perfect repository of all Catholic dogma, as it was intended to be. And keep in mind that it took 10 years. When Pope Pius started this, it was 1904. He died in 1914, and the code was finished by the next Pope, Benedictine the 14th or 15th, I think, who still went at it for another 3 years, and it was done in utmost papal secrecy, with it was under the secret, the papal seal of secrecy, although there was requests for help on it from all theologians, including academicians that studied the stuff, doctors of the church that were deep into canon law and so on. So it took a long time. It wasn't like a 5-minute exercise. It took 13 years to put it together and finally approve it. And after that, it was open to criticism, which it essentially didn't receive any. There was a tiny change to Code 1099 by Pope Pius XII, and it is literally a very tiny adaptation. It's almost irrelevant in terms of what it does, and it's related to marriage. It's got nothing to do with heresy, heretics, and so on. So it's a really strong evidence. A code that didn't get touched for the first 30 years and then had one tiny little adjustment to it, is really, there's nothing wrong with it in essence. And that's why the Satanists, immediately disbanded the group of cardinals set up to make sure that it kept with the past, but they had essentially done that job. And immediately tried to, promulgate a new code of canon law, a satanic code of canon law, the one of 1983, which is completely fake, absurd, and was designed to invalidate Canon 188 Part 4. For the most part, that is what that whole canon of 1983 was there to do. Was to conflate, confuse, mix up stuff. It is trash. The code of 1983 is absolute nonsense when you compare it to the one of 1917, as I have done with the specifics of Canon 188 Part 4 on my blog. Anyway, so the interesting thing is that Vigano has doctorate in canon law. So how the hell can he then say that he was deceived? And he mentioned it. He does say that the whole of Vatican II should be forgotten, but wait, that's not good enough, buddy. That's nowhere near good enough. Yes, the whole of Vatican II should be forgotten, but so should all those people that promulgated, taught it, created it, and produced it, and pushed it on as though it were Catholic doctrine, because it is not. It is simply insufficient to say, oh, well, let's forget Vatican II, but keep all the Satanists that did it. No, absolutely not. Anybody that didn't reject Vatican II from the start is anathema. Essentially, those people are not Catholics. Now, could Vigano have been fooled? I would say it's possible. Is it possible that what he says is he was trying to obey, he was trying to see whether the stuff of Vatican II that didn't quite gel could be reconciled with Catholic dogma and truth? It is possible. The guy was, as I say, he was ordained in 1968, a new priest, so maybe didn't want to make waves, maybe just thought, oh, well, I should just be quiet. And, I can see that being possible. The problem is that, let's say it takes him a few years, right? 75, 77, that's when the other guys got the SSPX got formed, how those guys eventually, even the guys that were in the SSPX got pushed out by Lefebvre, because Lefebvre was still sort of saying, well, he's the Pope, but we don't have to listen to him, which is complete nonsense. So the actual sedevacantists or sedeprivationists, whichever names you use to call them, around the 70s, mid-70s, late 70s, early 80s, mid-80s, that's when they made an absolutely definite split and kept to traditional Catholicism. In all that time, what was Vigano doing? He was just ignoring it. He was sitting with his ass in butter again. It's an Italian expression. If that doesn't make sense to you and if it sounds quite uncomfortable, I agree. I wouldn't like to have my ass in butter, but apparently some satanic sodomites probably like it, which is why they keep quiet and they sit around and they just, oh, well, I'm doing fine. Now, when the church is all but collapsed, except for a little remnant, and I suppose to his credit, he did speak out against Bergoglio and McCormick, that pederast who raped and sexually assaulted seminarians, possibly kids. I don't know the details. It was just gross. But anyway, that Ted McCormick guy, Vigano did mention that no, Bergoglia's lying. He knew about it because I'm one of the guys that told him about it and made sure that those things got to him and whatever. So fair enough, he finally called out a pederast after years of everybody knowing about it. I wouldn't call that a heroic action. He's actually stated the Vatican II was a complete nonsense. Okay, well, we all know that. Anybody who is actually a Catholic who cares at all knows that. And he has yet to state outright that all the fake popes are fake popes and all the fake clerics are fake clerics. And that includes him, quite possibly. So until he actually says that out loud and clearly, I don't trust. I certainly wouldn't trust this guy to be a proper bishop or a pope. The act of contrition that is required from him before we can even begin to think to accept him as a priest, never mind a bishop, is staggering. Even if you say he was innocent until 68, well, we got 52 years. 52 years is a long time for you not to be aware of certain stuff and carry on with it and promulgating the sin and the heresy and the fake mass and all that stuff. Nah, you don't get away with a couple of letters, buddy. So, Vigano, you gotta step up. And Dr. Taylor Marshall and all those other guys that are like, hey, well, Vigano said Vatican II is really bad. Where does that leave us? Oh crap, does that mean Ratzinger is part of it? I better not ask that question. It's not very brave of you, not very Catholic of you to face things head on and to just hide and pretend, not very cool. So I'll be looking into Dr. Taylor Marshall a little bit more because if he's out there spreading lies about Catholicism, well, he's basically picking a bone with Catholics, so I might end up picking a bone with him. And if that's not the case, you still have your $10 question there, Dr. Marshall, so you might want to answer it. It'd be good if you did. But yeah, it's all coming to a head soon, isn't it? And lastly, if you are a Catholic, or even if you're not, but you're looking at the craziness that's going on around us now with this Black Lives Matters and all that nonsense. This is what it must have been like if you were a sane person in 1938 Germany, and you're sort of like, what the hell is going on around me? What are all these crazy people wearing brown shirts doing? What the hell? So, yeah, the interesting thing, I saw an interesting meme, which was like, oh, white supremacy is now, is it? Do we get volume 2? When do we end Jewish supremacy? And some memes about one of the biggest rabbis in Israel who died. When he died, there was 800,000 people at his funeral, who is on record, quite a few times as saying that the Goyim are just there to serve the Jew and they have no purpose in life other than to be our slaves. Yeah, they don't teach you that in school, huh? So, really interesting times. But if you are one of these people that is saying, I urge you to get your own little community going. Find a place, even if you have to move or whatever, just try and surround yourself with people that are like yourself, a proper Catholic, ideally. And if not that, at least on your side, because there's strange times coming. And, the whole coronavirus pandemic is not letting up. They're now going to have a problem trying to keep everybody indoors over the summer because, if people go out in the summer and they realize it's all rubbish, then they've got a problem. And they've got to try and push through until the winter when you get the next bout of normal flu, which will kill a few people. And then they'll make that into like the second wave, which they're already talking about now. The second wave. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if they released a more virulent, vicious form of the coronavirus, possibly in Wuhan again, just to push the narrative. And yes, I absolutely put it at Bill Gates' feet at the moment, and another guy whose name I keep forgetting to look up. But you know the lady called Polly, I can't remember what her full name was. She's got a video channel which is really good. Polly, she's Polly something. And she does really in-depth stuff, finding out who funds all this stuff and whatever. And aside from Bill Gates, there's another guy that nobody knows anything about who's pretty much doing the same thing. Anyway, that's enough for now. And if you thought my little rant on sedevacantism was bad, I could always just play the sax for you. And I know you don't want that. So enjoy and have a good day.